How does it look to go from a W-2 employee to a full-time real estate investor utilizing creative financing? Stay tuned. Welcome to this week's edition to Note School TV, where every week, yes, every week at 11:05 Central Time, we bring you the most amazing guests and the most amazing content. And again, as usual, today is no different. We'll bring our guest on in just a few minutes, but before we do, I'd love for you to, make sure and like this episode. Yep, go ahead and like the episode. Number two, make sure and hit that subscribe button so that you can go back and watch all of the episodes of Note School TV. And number three, hit that bell notification. Yes, boom, go ahead and hit that bell notification right now so that you'll be informed when? Every Wednesday at 11:05, right before we go live. Also, if you would please continue to send in your comments and your questions. Guys, Eddie and I love to hear from you. We read each one of those comments and questions that you guys send in. And if you would like to know what we do, what else we do at Note School, let's go ahead and go to noteschool.com/TV. Again, noteschool.com/TV. And we would love to have a conversation and get you into one of our 2-hour master classes. And we'll talk more about that at the end of today's episode. So with that, I am going to bring on our Chief Visionary Officer, our founder of Note School, all-around good guy, Mr. Eddie Speed.
Good morning, Joe.
Good morning, sir. You know, you had a milestone. You and your bride, you and Miss Martha, had a milestone yesterday, Eddie.
We did. We had our 41st wedding anniversary.
Yeah. Absolutely. So yeah, Chris and I will celebrate 29 years the 16th of August. So yeah, it's crazy.
Now, Joe, could you explain to me why people in the South get married in the middle of the summer?
I guess it'll be a hot mess, dude.
Yeah, that's kind of true. We got a little heat spell here in Texas, and I think it's going to be 106 today. So,
you know, I was talking to on our Deal Lab call yesterday. I was talking to Kevin Stokes, and it was 107 degrees in Boise, Idaho yesterday.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing about it. In 2 weeks in Boise, it will probably be 85, and in Texas, it'll probably still be 105. So anyway, It's great to live in the South, but in the summertime, we are reminded that it's kind of like living in the North in the winter. It's going to have a few months of that. So, Joe, speaking of a hot topic.
Yes. This tags on to what we were talking about last week on last week's episode. So let's bring up the slide here and let's talk about this, Eddie. So according to Reuters and insider intelligence news sources, U.S. banks wrestle with drastically increasing their capital requirements. Eddie, that is a big deal, my friend, drastically increasing capital. So let's talk about what that means.
Let me connect the dots for folks, okay? So we haven't talked about failing banks since after 2008. Mm-hmm. And to be honest with you, Joe, I got started in the business in 1980, but by 1986, the biggest story in the market by far was the failing banks and how much opportunity that produced for the discount note business, right? And so the audience may listen to this and say, look, that's old school stuff, Eddie. We don't care about what happened in the 80s or even, whatever and stuff. So let me tell you guys why this matters. Commercial real estate has been predominantly fueled with financing. Without financing, values don't fuel. Commercial real estate has been predominantly financed by banks below the top 25 banks, right? The top 25 banks are kind of in one category. 70% of commercial lending are banks below the top 25 banks. And so it has come to the regulators, their concerns that they don't feel like they have enough capital requirements. Now, Joe, what's funny is there's a general statement that most people in business know, and that is banks have to have a 6% capital reserve. That's kind of a basic number.
That's right.
That's not actually how it works, is it, Joe?
No, it's not. So, Eddie, and the interesting thing about this is that before this came to being, right, it only affected banks with $250 billion or more in assets.
All of a sudden they were going to have a higher capital reserve,
right? And now they've drawn this down to as little as 100 billion. And I thought that was funny, with as little as 100 billion, right?
Well, Joe, and there's 4,800 thereabout. Right. There's 4,800 FDI insured banks in the United States. What's the average size of those banks?
The average size of a bank in the FDIC insured bank is about 83 billion in assets.
Wow. Okay? So the average bank of all 4,800, there's a lot of banks that are going to be affected by this.
Well, Eddie, there are. And so just to put it into perspective, the biggest bank in the U.S. is, of course, JP Morgan Chase. They have assets of $2.690 trillion.
Yeah.
And so I guess what they're saying here, Eddie, if they have less than 100 billion, that's not a big deal. If they get in trouble, we can just write a check, right?
Well, they are the government, okay?
Well, that's right. Now, Eddie, this number, the second bullet here is for some banks, this will mean as much as a 20% increase in their capital reserves. That's huge.
Okay. So let's just say, Joe, that a bank had a 6% reserve. Now, there's a formula to it that's not exactly tacked to 6%.
Depending on their health and the number of loans they have out and how their loans are performing, all that, yes.
But a fairly good considered rule of thumb is about 6%.
Right.
So, Joe, if you're telling me that they got to go up by 20%, you're talking about 6% of 100 billion. Now going to call it, 7.5%. Right?
Yep.
You're talking about, this is not chump change.
It's not chump change.
And once again, now all of a sudden they're going to have, and this money can't be at risk, meaning they can't lend it out.
Reserve capital must be riskless. That's right.
So understand, Joe, what this means is exactly what we keep saying. Banks have all of these commercial loans. The rates are coming due. They have dominated this. The banks less than the top 25 banks have dominated commercial lending. And commercial lending is what we're focused on. What did Bank of America say about it, Joe?
Well, the CEO, and I'm going to quote Mr. Brian Moynihan, CEO of Bank of America. He says he estimates that a 100 basis point increase, which is 1%, right, in reserve requirements would stunt Bank of America's ability to extend $150 billion worth of loans. That's Bank of America. What does that do to the smaller regional banks in their reserves, right? 1 basis point not 19, but 1.
Joe, the biggest thing that we're making such an issue out of this. Listen, we've talked a lot about commercial real estate. Anybody that reads the mid-year TREP report can't think that any aspect of commercial lending is safe from, not having a problem, right? There's degrees of problems depending on the asset class, office building versus, storage or so forth and so on. But the other thing, Joe, is this, and that is that now the pressure is getting put on the guys that have been financing that industry.
That's right.
And what we're saying is this is what's caused an incredible increase in the amount of note inventory we're seeing.
Right.
Troubled banks equal discounted notes for sale, right? But more importantly, that investors that have been investing, passive investors that have been investing in various commercial real estate classes, multifamily being by far the most big, the biggest. Then all of a sudden, it's going to push this capital into the market.
That's right.
It's like taking a giant thing of water, Joe, and just taking dirt and filling up a giant piece of the hole. The water's got to go somewhere. This money has to go somewhere. And this is why we're talking about it, is because we see this as a big advantage for our industry. We're not laughing at those that are affected. We're just business people, and we're looking at it as considering the opportunity. That is exactly what we're seeing.
And that's right. And one other point here is it continues to constrict lending, not only to commercial, but to regular home loans. I mean, Bank of America makes mortgage loans. Wells Fargo really doesn't any longer, but the other, JP Morgan Chase, all of these other banks, and all that just affects their ability, and it just increases our ability to work with folks that are just missed, right? We call them penalty box buyers.
The traditional residential mortgage industry, the traditional loan origination industry for residential mortgages is their turmoil has not stopped.
Right.
Just the commercial has become much more of a headline.
That's right.
Both of which are drastically affected.
That's right. All right. So,
let's break today.
Let's bring our guest on, and Eddie. He's from a little town in Michigan called Paw, P-A-W, capital P-A-W, right?
Well, I've never been to Paw, Michigan, but I know a guy that lives there.
Yes, sir. That's right. And good fella. And we're glad to have him as part of the Note School family for sure.
All right. Well, we bring Note School members from all walks of life. As you said in the headline, this guy was in the IT related business, and he is from a little town in Michigan, Paw, Michigan, and it's gone from a regular W-2 employee to now shifting his business full-time in real estate, and then really felt the need to say, I've got to do creative financing to make all this math work.
That's right.
And you guys welcome Ryan Miersma.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hey, Ryan.
Hi.
So what's happening in Paw today, my man?
It's warm.
Yeah.
I got pigs outside. They probably want me to go spray some water on them. They'd like that.
Yeah, I'm familiar.
Yep. Just doing some work from home today.
Good for you. Good. Well, it's 106 here in Texas, so maybe not that hot.
Nowhere near that hot right now.
Listen, guys, I'm going to drop off. Ryan, you and Eddie have a blast, and I'll come back on at the end of the episode. So, guys, I'll see you in a few minutes.
Awesome. Right. Thank you. Ryan, we have surveyed Note School members and surveyed kind of Note School audiences. And one of the things that they have commented on consistently is a lot of people reach a certain age in life and they say, can I build enough of a business to walk off my W-2 job? So let's talk about that. What you want, how you found Note School and what was in your head when you went through that process.
Okay, sure. I don't know how far you want me to go back, but say around 2017, it's around the time that I figured out the 401k that I had in my corporate job was not what I would consider a retirement plan. And I just didn't have much faith in it. And I thought there'd be a better way. So one of my brothers had bought some rental properties and thought that real estate was a good vehicle. So I spent a bunch of time, probably a year, 18 months, kind of studying, reading all the forums, trying to figure out if real estate would be a good route to take. And end of 2017, I bought my first rental property and just kind of did the DIY thing, did some repairs myself, found the tenants, managed it myself, and realized that, hey, this works. But at that point, I didn't know what to do because I kind of used all my savings to buy that house. And was hearing all these stories of these guys that were starting with nothing and then quickly building up portfolio properties and building these passive income streams. And that's what I was after. So 2018, my wife and I.
A little harder to do that in real life, though, than people say on Facebook, right?
It is. It's work, right? And there's a lot to learn. So in 2018, Emily and I, we hired a coach and a mentor to really help us get our real estate investing business off to the races. And that was huge for us. We went from that one rental property to having 11 units within 6 months after starting that. And it just went up from there. Yeah, thank you. So what brought us to Note School was, first it was leaving my career, right? So I spent several years, until last spring, working full time in a career job that had me traveling and on the road a lot, and building up passive income streams. And come last spring, there was just a lot going on in life. Our house was being remodeled. That was part of it. So I was kind of like working in a little corner of our bedroom while guys were whacking hammers all around me. But something we just got to the point where something had to give, and made the decision that it was time to leave my career. So I flew out west and met with Matt, my coach, and kind of talked things through. His feeling was similar, like, yeah, go for it. So headed back home and put in my 2 weeks and jumped in with both feet. So at that point, it was kind of off to the races. But quickly we were noticing the market was changing, and I knew a little bit about creative investing, creative financing. I had bought and sold some properties. I had rentals on seller financing. I had bought and sold on terms and had a couple of land contracts that were performing. And somebody from Note School had been on a podcast, and I had heard all of this crazy ninja stuff that you could do with notes, and how much value and power there were in notes beyond what I had already been doing. And it just kind of blew my mind. And so that was in the back of my mind. And when I met with my mentor, he specifically brought up Eddie, you, and going through your training. So it was shortly after leaving my W-2 job that I jumped in with Note School, and very, very happy for that move.
Yeah, I've known Matt a long time. He and his wife, Mercedes, and I was in Collective Genius with him, a mastermind, for years, and we've remained friends. And I appreciate that. And we get an endorsement from good coaches that get people down the road. But then it's like, You know, one thing that's funny, Ryan, that's happened, and this wasn't necessarily a truth a year ago. A lot of people were doing creative financing a year ago to combat high interest rates and get the seller to carry terms, but a lot of them were keeping them as rentals. You know, rents were going up and that kind of thing. Now, all of a sudden, here we are a year later, and those starter homes, you can owner finance that property at a far higher payment than you can rent it. And you've been kind of going in that direction. So, you know, there's a different path depending on what the market tells us all the time. Well, I mean, let me ask you this. When you came to Note School, what is it you were looking for?
I was looking for tools, right? I was looking to be equipped to broaden our opportunity. So regardless of how the market changed, I wanted to be able to be effective in that market. Yeah. So the wholesaling and flipping market was starting to change, right? It went from easy to find deals to, oh, this is a lot of work, right? To find new deals. And so part of it is
the exit for flipping drastically changed.
Yes, it did. And part of it was also, if it's harder to find opportunities, do I want to spend more time finding opportunities, or would it be better to figure out how to make more money out of those same number of opportunities?
Yeah, one of the expressions I've heard used in these real estate masterminds is getting the juice out of the lemon, you know, and when flips were plentiful and it was super easy to flip because the hedge funds were in the business and the smaller investors were buying them, doing the Burr model, right? And then all of a sudden the math started flipping around and the Burr model really wasn't working. Now that's a general statement. That doesn't mean that every Burr won't work, but it's hard to go pay retail for a property, rehab it, rent it, and refinance it. And now all of a sudden you got a cash flow model, right? I mean, the math isn't good for that. And I applaud you. You know, you made a lot of decisions. You know, you started out part-time, which is what most people do. Then you got to full-time. And then all of a sudden the market started changing. And, you know, Ryan, quite honestly, a lot of people would just get scared and kind of roll up a little bit. You did.
It'd be much easier to do that. I mean, I won't lie. That thought, you know, certainly crossed my mind many times. Like, it'd be easier to go back and get my job back, you know, than to push through. Certainly. Yep.
No, I mean, you wouldn't do that now, though, right?
Oh, no, absolutely not. I'm just saying, over the last year, that thought had crossed my mind. Yeah.
Well, I say this all the time. We don't know what we don't know until we see something, right? The need for notes, like you saw us do the opening with the banks, and you've been hearing us talk about it over and over. The reason I'm making such a big deal about the banks and the mortgage companies is you have availability of money and cost of money. Cost of money has been on everybody's mind. Rising rates, unaffordable payments, right? But let me tell you something. A bigger deal than cost of money is availability of money. And we are entering into a market where the availability of money is getting really thin and much thinner. You know, the mortgage credit availability, just about 50% of the people that could qualify for a mortgage before the virus started, a residential mortgage, cannot qualify today. Right? That tells you there's a huge need for seller financing, and you're not seller financing substandard people. You're just financing people that common sense says they've been left behind. And then all of a sudden on the commercial side and all of the opportunities related to that. So I want to talk about a little bit about you've you've been on a number of deal labs. You've been out. You've hung out with us. We've gotten to know each other fairly well. You brought some really, let me compliment you. Brought some really smart deals to the deal lab, right? We've carved it up. We tweaked it and looked at various opportunities. Where do you see your business going?
So right now, so a friend of mine joined me this year, and so we kind of started took my existing business, but started a new business with it, and we've been ramping that up and trying to get to a comfortable volume of opportunities. And where we see ourselves going is to just continue to ramp up for a while, but to transition into more of a note origination focus. So we'd like to buy more on terms as well as sell them on terms. But there's also, and we'd love to build up our network of private investors, people that are seeking to put money away for a longer period of time, right? We have plenty of access to capital for short-term investments, right? Like flip money. And that's great. But when we see an opportunity, every flip is different, right? So the beauty of a flip is we know inside and out that asset. And so we can identify, based on the likely profit of that flip or the condition of the property and the location and the property type, whether or not that might be a far better opportunity to convert into a cash flowing asset rather than just sell it and take the capital.
And that's why we started out the show today with a news story about the condition of banks, because 70% of commercial lending was done by the banks smaller than the top 25 banks. Now, $100 billion bank is not a little bank, okay? But understand that we started out the story today because what I can tell you is people that were raising money for syndications, for storage, for multifamily, for strip centers, for various things, as their deals don't work and they're not working at a pretty alarming rate, then all of a sudden, what does that passive investor, what now can he invest in? What is his alternative to the more traditional alternative of multifamily? Mm-hmm. And therein lies what you now are starting to become really clear about. This is why I've become so focused on this, because now all of a sudden you've got a whole new investor showing up saying, can I deploy some money that's safe and I'll get my money back and earn a decent return? That's your guy.
Yeah. And for us, it's now getting in front of those guys, right? We weren't out there raising private capital for syndications before. Yeah. So us, that's where I'm starting to focus more on is just getting ready to start presenting and meeting with people and hopefully building that pipeline.
Well, I know that we're putting a lot of focus on that with our members, and how to do it, how to say it, and what's the right passive investor look like? When did we become good partners with a passive investor? Who is that passive investor? What is the passive investor we don't want to fool with? Mm-hmm. What's the passive investor who's now looking for alternatives? And so that's really a big deal. So I want to move past a big transition for you, which was you were doing it part-time. You came to Note School. We've added creative financing. You've gotten positioned well enough that then you felt like, okay, I can bring on a partner and really scale it, right? Because we've got some fundamental things in place. And so then I want to go to like the next horizon, which is, you've made a lot of decisions. You're a very strategic thinker. Like, where do these strategic decisions take you? What does your business look like maybe in the next 5 years? And how does that lead to a personal life that's now you look back and say, I've really bettered myself and my family?
It's a great question. So originally when I left my career, I kind of wanted to keep things small, figuring if I could kind of do better at squeezing the juice out of the lemon, I could do just fine. I'd say many years ago, so I was saved, became a Christian, and came to understand that I've got a role in life as a husband and a father and part of my church community. And ever since then, I've wanted to kind of start a family business, a family economy, and to be more involved with my family on a day-to-day basis and raising my kids. And so we've done a few different things over the years, and this real estate thing really turned out to be something where we could make that happen. And I kind of thought that keeping it real small was the way to go. So that was kind of what my plans were. But I make plans, and the Lord establishes my steps. So his ways are better than mine. And what's happened has been a good friend of mine lost his job in a corporate environment, and it seemed like an opportunity to see if he wanted to join me. And in the last, 5 months, we've really worked on building the business and enabling it to flow and grow. And we're getting to work with more and more people. And I'm seeing the fruit of that as we're reducing risk, right? Less risk is falling on me. But we've got more people making things happen. And that's allowing us to make, like a home renovation happen faster and cheaper.
Yeah.
So that's been a lot of fun. Where do I see us in 5 years? That's a long ways away for me. So man, we want to keep growing. We want to start building more passive income through notes. Still maybe some rentals, but yeah. I mean, what I'd say, getting my kids more involved in different aspects of the business. They ride along with me sometimes. I've got a friend that's doing some work for us on doing clean outs and demolition and stuff. And so I'm getting to where some of my kids are going to work for him on my projects. And that's really neat to see. And they're getting that experience and getting paid, and things that we can talk about and work on at home. So yeah, I mean, it's not all about the money. Certainly I want to be successful. But really just that kind of that growth path and involvement with my family is important.
Freedom is more than having more money than you had before.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Freedom is that you get your life back. Freedom is being able to do something that you couldn't envision before. The reason you always thought about being small is that you didn't know how to build a company that was any bigger than a certain size. Now, all of a sudden, you're starting to learn financial modeling techniques, and you start realizing why you may never have 100 employees, but you start really to think, yeah, this can be scaled because we're doing it with scale, with discipline and structure. We're not just getting bigger for the sake of being bigger. And it's not, and what you're now figuring out is it doesn't have to be any more of a time suck than it ever was.
Mm-hmm.
That's what, when you and I've talked about this and you kind of jotted down some things that are like important to you. And Joe and I thought they were really important to our audience. You've now realized you can build a bigger business that's not unsafe, and you don't have to go give up this freedom of time that you have. You don't have to go give that up to do that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But how do you don't learn that until you try it, right? So,
well, I mean, And you've gone about, in my humble opinion, you've gone about it in the right way. Most people that show up at Note School are bruised up. Right? I'm going to be honest with you. Most people that show up at Note School have tried a bunch of stuff and gotten really bruised up. And you're a different kind of a Note School person, because you weren't bruised up when you showed up, but you were thirsty to go add something to your business, because you were looking at just a straight up business model, right? You were getting squeezed, but you weren't really super bruised up. And I just really appreciate that. Like, you made a decision. We're really good at taking people that have crashed in some models and rebuilding them and reconfiguring them and finding the best in people, I think, that they can go do this. But what I think you've done is you just, you're not willing to give up your freedom to go expand your business. And I think what you're saying is, and what you're seeing is, you don't have to give up your freedom to do that.
Yeah, you're right. And that's really rewarding to know that. And so I'm looking forward to, as things continue to grow, actually to gain more of my time freedom back.
And I'm not poo-pooing rentals. I'm just saying right now, today, we're in a market condition where you can owner finance a house for a way bigger payment than you can rent it. Mm-hmm. With way less expenses with an owner finance note, call them almost zero, versus with a rental, you have expenses. So it's just math. We just have entered a note cycle instead of a rental cycle. I'm not poo-pooing rentals. Rentals are great when prices are low and have the lift of coming up. They're great when rents are low and have a chance of going up. Property values and rents have kind of peaked. And so now all of a sudden, if you're just comparing somebody buying a house from you and having a traditional mortgage, that mortgage payment is way more than rent right now. Why not be the bank?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yep.
Mr. Joe?
Sir. Well, Eddie, you said, or actually Ryan said something very eloquently, and I've heard it said by many people over the last few years, right? This real estate thing, is it really going to work?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
This real estate thing, right? So, Ryan, great story. It takes a bit of courage to go from a great, W-2 paying job, right, to go out on your own. But you've been a part of the Note School family for a little while, and we've seen you change and grow and grow that business, and we're just really happy, because it really is, at the end of the day, it's all about the family and the legacy that you leave for that family.
Ryan, there's one thing that I forgot to ask you. Now that you're in Note School, you don't have to go buy a property to end up with a note, do you?
No, not absolutely not. Right. So, I look forward to buying notes and off of the platform, and I'm probably going to need look for your assistance in the first one. Definitely.
Oh yeah. Well, we're accustomed to all that. Ryan, you got a great story, sir. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing with us and sharing your family and your spiritual journey. Those are all things that mean a lot to all of us. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Thank you, Ryan. All right, guys. Well, you heard it. There's another one chalked up there for this week's edition. Ryan's, just a great guy, has a great family. We got to meet his partner there, Scott, here a few months ago at Summer Summit. So we really appreciate, like Eddie said, you being a part of the Note School family, and you too can be a part of the Note School family. If you'd like to attend one of our 2-hour master classes done by Mr. Eddie Speed himself and our Chief Market Officer, Max Keller, simply go to noteschool.com/TV, and in the subject line, put on there, love to attend master class, and we will get you in a master class. And because you are here and you're a faithful viewer, hey, we're going to let you attend that 2-hour master class for free. So make sure and do that. And we will see you next week, same place, same time. And wow, I can't believe that it's time for our monthly update already, right? This month has flown by. So stay cool, stay hydrated. We'll see you next week. Thanks so much.